ever, like, going into the 90s, like, there's some movies that I would recommend you leave in the past, the movies with cops. So you had one cop who was playing by the rules, ready for retirement, the other one who was rogue. Took the badge. Maverick. He's a maverick. He don't play by the rules. He's dangerous. He hangs on to 18-wheelers going, 90 miles per hour by the side and takes a fleet of army down, a whole fleet. Just talking about it, I get blurry. That's how bad it gets. No, there's no rules. Once you take the badge off, anything goes. It's full on, too, when the good cop who played by the rules his whole career goes,
all right, I'm taking my badge off, too, for this one time.
And, you think about those films we grew up on, is the cop movies, lawyer TV shows, the hospital shows. You would think that the only jobs in America are cops, lawyers, and some gig at the hospital. All right. Welcome to Real Deal Media's Late Night Update. I am Dean Ryan, and tonight is an incredible night of discovery, incredible night of bonding, incredible night of revenge. As tonight's episode is China's Revenge. Because revenge is the name of the game. I am your late night host, Dean Ryan, still here with you in this news radio edition, as the major announcement outside of everything happening in the world is this will be the last week of the news radio edition, a series that will go down in the books in the Hall of Fame as we are prepared and have made the acquisition, or at least the steps for it, and for our new system. And I can't wait personally. So thank you for putting up with this in us and me. Well, tonight we're going to be talking about a lot of things that have to do with the blackout war, as many moving parts are now in transition, I guess you can say. If that's still a word. Well, yes, we're going to be getting into what is now in effect here in the U.S. You might have heard major blackouts in major cities across the United States. We'll be talking about that, as well as what's the relation to China. It seems to be happening there as well. Yes, indeed. We're going to be getting into also the government shutdown. Does this have something to do with it? And just how long will the shutdown persist? We'll talk about that, and a new threat to mankind. Sadly, the mysterious spot now on the Earth's magnetic field. We'll see what that entails. Also, the major World War III news with the cyber attacks. In addition to that, the ending of a war and beginning of a new one, just like the prophecies told us, as well as major firings. Yes, major dismissals now in the Department of Injustices has now come underway. And the politicos are on fire as well. as Democrats and the Senate Democrats and some Republicans too have now put a major roadblock for war. What does that mean? And Huntington Beach is in the news, the national news that is, as they're now making way again, once again, 5 years later, if they first came on the scene, as well as the Latin American kings themselves over there in Bogota are now slamming the U.S. in a new direction for Japan. You don't want to miss that in some other major headlines, late night headlines from around the world. So you don't want to miss that. Well, let's get started now as we have some late night headlines from around the world and in your late night neck of the woods. Well, this is quite frustrating, scary for some, and eerily just right on time, as now a major blackout has unfolded in major cities across the United States. Yes, it's now being said that the AWS services have now recovered after a day-long outage hits major sites. That would explain it. Well, unfortunately for those who look better in the dark, well, this is now, the lights are back on, as now the Amazon Web Services, which have suffered a major outage. You might have noticed if you have the Signal app that's been in and out all day long, and for the past 48 hours to be exact. Well, it's now a leading provider over there, one of these major infrastructures, leading providers. Now the cloud infrastructure technology that was hit, accounting for about a third of the market. Well, by this evening, on this very dreary Monday, the AWS, the company said that the services have returned to normal operations. Nothing to see here. Go about your day. Actor previously showed user reports of problems at sites including Amazon, Snapchat, Disney, Reddit, and Canva. Indeed, well, many sites have become now back fully online within a few hours. Even reports of YouTube has showed another spike in the user reports around noon Eastern today. The company's latest update has now said they've returned. They emphasize nothing to see here. We don't know why this happened. Amazon also confirmed that the outage impacted Amazon.com, some of its subsidiaries, and the AWS customer support operations. We wonder who runs AWS. It's a big question, deserves a big answer. Well, the outage, just to give you a timeline, was first reported earlier today, about 3 a.m. Eastern Time. In one region hosted in Northern Virginia was the first to call it. A notice on AWS's status page said it was experiencing major DNS problems. Its database services that underpins many of the applications were also down. Well, the AWS cited an operational issue, a glitch in the system affecting multiple services, and said it was, quote, working on multiple parallel paths to accelerate recovery. A person who is definitely familiar with the outage has now stated. Well, in fact, we can now share with you that even some of the residents in LA, particularly a resident of Pasadena, well, he reported the following as it scared him to the bone. In fact, here's a clip.
Yeah, man, we're not talking just some minor computer glitch or phone glitch. No way. Absolutely not. Not what I know about computers and networking and stuff. Absolutely not. The TV was down. That stopped working. And that's on AT&T Home Network. Then the phone, so I decided, to check the phone. Let me check and see if my streaming service works on that. A different system, 5G AT&T, different system, not using Wi-Fi, nothing. Rebooted the phone, still nothing.
A Frankie Elliott of Pasadena reports, yes, AT&T was down. And residents across LA County and some parts of Orange County have also reported the same experience as far as the UK. This is quite troubling, yet timely for those who know the nature and environment of war, as well as their history books. We applaud them. Although everything seems to be back up, the down detector showed user reports indicating problems at sites including Disney, Lyft, McDonald's app, the New York Times, Reddit, Ring doorbells, Robinhood, Snapchat, United Airlines, T-Mobile, Venmo, and yes, even Pornhub itself. And again, the British government is now stepping in, and they said websites, government.uk, and HM Revenue and Customs were also experiencing issues just today. Well, a government spokesperson told a recent network that, quote, "We are aware of the incident affecting Amazon Web Services and several other online services which rely on infrastructure. Through our established incident response and arrangements, we are in contact with the company, who are working to restore services as quickly as possible. Thank you." Well, it's worth noting Lloyd's Banking Group confirmed that some of its services were affected and asked customers to, quote, "bear with us." Well, barely without a wink. Well, it worked to restore them just 20 minutes later. Well, the outage also brought down critical tools inside Amazon, its warehouse, and yes, its delivery employees itself. Along with drivers from Amazon's Flex service, well, they weren't able to flex today, as reported on Reddit, that internal systems were offline at many sites. Some warehouse workers were instructed to stand by the break rooms, take a stretch, count to 3 in loading areas during their shift. Well, they couldn't load any more. So there you have it right there. And it goes on and on. Reddit and airlines once again. And we just reported to you about a month ago. American Airlines, we believe, in United as well at one point, were also downing all their flights twice, 2 days in 1 month. What does that tell you? And it goes on, and many other social media sites as well, Coinbase. And this could affect the banks, as now banking and the financials are beginning to break, as we shared with you last week. Definitely not a accident, but a planned takedown that is going to be blamed on somebody, and I can't imagine who that's going to be. Well, they can't use the caveman on this one, can they? One other late night headlines, I can now tell you this. A man has now been arrested over there in the Atlanta airport. This just coming in. Yes, a man arrested inside the Atlanta airport after planning to shoot up the terminal with an AR-15. A police chief who's familiar with the airport said. Well, the man who Mayor Andre Dickens said had, quote, mental challenges, had 27 rounds of ammunition and a Springfield AR-15 rifle in his truck at the airport. That's right, over there in Atlanta, this man with mental challenges was arrested after planning to shoot up the Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport just this morning. Well, the man who's now being identified as 49-year-old Billy Cagle of Cartsville, Atlanta, showed up to the airport just roughly after 9 a.m. Eastern, after Atlanta Police Chief Darren Schoenbaum said he live streamed on a social media that he had plans to go to the Atlanta airport to, quote, shoot it up. Well, Cagle's family said they heard about the threats and immediately notified Cartsville police, who said had past run-ins with Mr. Cagle and previously convicted felon he was. Cagle's family had no immediate response to that, although Cartsville police immediately told Atlanta police, who identified the airport security, that they immediately began the search for Cagle, that his family told us everything. We were able to intercept him before all hell broke loose for him to shoot it up. Well, sadly, this wasn't the Iranian that some people in some countries wanted. Mr. Cagle seems to be of the lighter complexion, and no word of his manifesto, music video, or left behind engraved bullet casings that connected him to Antifa at this time. And this is a developing story, and we will report to you as it comes to light, as the, quote, FBI is continuing to investigate the incident that they probably orchestrated. But who are we and who are they? Moving on now, you might have noticed the government shutdown is still in full effect. Yes, many people are applauding it, and many people are, well, providing golf clapping at this point, because that's how unsatisfied people are and seeming to be. Well, check this out now. The government shutdown, they're saying now, could be the longest ever shutdown, running until Thanksgiving. What might the economic damage be? The question's now being thrown around, thrown around once again. Well, the Market Watch poll now finds 47% of residents and respondents who took the poll, well, they didn't just dance on it. They said that their number one shutdown concern is the potential hit to the economy. Yes, that's true. The ongoing government shutdown, once widely viewed as a 2 or 3 week affair, it's morphing into Washington's debacle that could really be extended into November, all the way into Turkey Day. Where's a quote? At the end, an end to the shutdown requires either the White House engagement on a deal or Democrats to cave. As of now, there's no signs of either, said an analyst at Beacon Policy Advisors in a note. They further went on to add that, quote, the current shutdown could be in the running for the longest federal shutdown in the history of the world. And the world has had many federal shutdowns since its inception. The Big Bang Theory, or the one that came from Mars. Well, this month, the partial shutdown will have lasted at least 20 days as of today, the 20th day anniversary, while the record for the longest closure is held by a 35-day shutdown that took place nearly 7 years ago during Donald Trump's first term as president, you may recall. Well, prediction markets have now spoken and said they're saying it could go 41 days, as the Vegas odds are now taking how long the shutdown could last. Well, 41 days, many people have said. And November 1st will be open the enrollment for Obamacare. Will it make it? And that's widely seen as something that could help drive the deal making. Now, the current shutdown has happened largely because the Democrats and Republicans are locked in a standoff over including an extension for Obamacare subsidies in funding legislation, and the higher premiums for plans will become more apparent starting November 1st. However, many analysts have now spoken and emphasized that these subsidies for Obamacare, also known as the Affordable Care Act, also known as the death panels, don't actually stop until the end of this year. The true deadline for the action of the subsidies is now known as December 31st. If you can recall and remember that when it comes, delays at airports because of the staffing shortages are also viewed as something that could bring about the end of the shutdown. If the problems for travelers become acute and generate lots of headlines, well, you could see a major change by tomorrow. Air traffic controllers and Transportation Security Administration, the TSA, well, when they're not busy putting their hands down your pants, while the screeners are now being told to show up for work, even though they're missing out on pay due to the shutdown. Some are expected to protest by not showing up. Some are expected to go back to their original jobs as greeters at Walmarts. And here's a quote in closing. Travel, premium shocks, potential off-ramps, shutdowns, inconvenience for Americans will make a deal happen like the blink of an eye. An insider who's familiar with the shutdown has said. Well, just in time for the holidays, isn't it? How fitting, how comforting, and, well, so is this next story is now. Well, in spite of all the blackouts, the shutdowns, the creepy TSA people, despite all of the danger, well, there's just one more to add to the table. Well, yes, now a mysterious spot is now in Earth's magnetic field, and it's growing rapidly. Yes, it is. Well, this thing that has been described as the skin tag on Earth, the hairy mole that won't go away, a mysterious spot to those of the intellectual academic world. Well, there's something special happening in this region that is causing the field to awaken in a more intense way. That's right, a major dip in Earth's magnetic field over the South Atlantic has now been puzzling scientists now for over a century. Yes, it has, as perhaps most strangely, the weak spot, dubbed the South Atlantic Anomaly, has now grown so rapidly over the last 11 years, especially now in 2025. Well, according to a satellite data industry and data works, It now suggests that showing it's expanded by an area of equivalent to half the size of continental Europe. And my calculations are right. That's about a fourth of Texas. Well, it's entailed in a new paper now published by the journal Physics of the Earth and Planetary Interiors, which highly recommend. An international team of researchers now have analyzed data collected by the European Space Agency's SWARM, a constellation comprised of 3 identical satellites that measure the Earth's magnetic signals. Now, in doing so, the findings could allow us to improve the existing magnetic models. Now, the theory is now enormous, is now the swirling body of molten iron in the planet's outer core, roughly 1,800 miles below the surface, could be generating a major dip in the magnetic field, which many of experts say has affected people's moods, polar shifting, and why people are very anxious, very irritable. That's right. Moving on. It's also known that many factors influencing this weakening, scientists working to identify other factors at play, but at the latest they're saying we could be doomed. It might be too late or might be too soon. Well, the South Atlantic anomaly is not just a single block. It's a changing continental block as it's differently towards Africa and it's near South America, and it's coming fast, but it won't tell you when. Swarm data has also found that the magnetic field is strengthening over Siberia while weakening over Canada. How fitting and how comforting. Well, the ESA, in closing, is expected to extend its swarm mission beyond 2030. They're going to continue to research this, but then by then, it might be too late, as we could be squashed like a bug as this thing lands on us. If we're only so lucky, aren't we? That's going to bring us now to something else here. You don't want to miss this. Now we're going to go into the World War III apparatus. Aren't we blessed for it? Well, now, in speaking of the blackouts now, in the relation to China, this is a huge story, as this is now our feature story for tonight as we get to World War III. Well, now China is now blaming the United States for cyber break-in, claims America is world's biggest burglar. That's right. The U.S. is, quote, the greatest source of chaos in cyberspace, and you could put a different country hyphen right next to the U.S. if you know what I'm saying. Well, now China has blamed the U.S. for the major cyber attack that just took place against its National Time Service Center, alleging it could have disrupted the country's communications, financials, transportation networks, and even caused power outages. Now, what are the odds that this is happening in China? And almost this was a beta test that happened here today, in the past 3 days to be exact, in the U.S. Something we call a self-inflicted wound to blame somebody else. Well, just yesterday, Sunday, WeChat over there in China, the Ministry of State Security said it uncovered, quote, irrefutable evidence that the U.S. National Security Agency, the NSA, exploited a major security flaw in a foreign mobile phone brand's messaging service to hijack phones and steal sensitive data belonging to China's National Time Service Center employees beginning in late March 2022. Well, it's now continued once again. China's intelligence service also alleged that in April 2 years ago, 2023, well, the NSA used stolen credentials to break into the Time Service Center's computers and snoop around on its networks. That's right. It's accused the American spy agency of deploying, quote, a cyber warfare platform and activating 42 specialized cyber attack weapons to launch a high-intensity cyber attack against multiple internal network systems throughout China in between 2023 and in June 2024. And here we are again. They're now saying that the NSA has now attempted to penetrate the high-precision ground-based timing system, potentially disabling it. That's right, which added that the Beijing's national security authorities ultimately thwarted the attack. Well, now China's Time Service Center, located over there in the Shaanxi, Xinjiang province, it's now providing high precision timing to the nation's government and critical infrastructure sectors for defense due to the U.S. cyber attack. Now, just last week, they're saying highly sophisticated nation-state hackers, as they're being described, reportedly Beijing-backed snoops, broke into its network and stole big IP source codes, undisclosed vulnerability details, and some customer configuration data. Well, just this past Sunday, the Chinese Information Board accused a U.S. spy agency once again of continually carrying out cyber attacks targeting China, Southeast Asia, Europe, and South America itself, particularly Venezuela, while coercing other countries to hype up so-called Chinese hackers' attacks. As I told you, see? Now, ironclad facts have proven that the U.S. is the true matrix, the greatest source of chaos in cyberspace, Beijing added, but did not provide any proof to back up its latest allegations. The NSA did not immediately respond to this story. Well, what does that tell us? What does that tell us? What does that tell us? So now you see a ramping up in war with Russia, and now you see it with China. Why? Well, they're the two major superpower allies of who? Iran, which certain countries want to go to war with. And America is the military might of Israel. That's why this is happening. It's a tariff war. It's a cyber attack war. And don't I know it? I was taken down. And now it's a war of precision, proximity, and resurgence as it tries to revamp its momentum to get a war with Iran. Here we go again. Continuing now, as China's revenge will come. Even if it doesn't, we'll self-inflict again to blame China. Well, now Trump's now with Putin, speaking of which, and they're now negotiating the end of not the UK, but the Ukrainian war. That's true. This is coming out of Natural News. It's now Trump and Putin negotiate an end to the war in Ukraine once again. Well, this is just taking place just over the past 24 hours now, as the U.S. and Russia are now quickly organizing a new summit between Trump and Putin in a Budapest setting to negotiate the end of the war in Ukraine. Now, this signals a major diplomatic push now following a productive phone call between the two leaders and old pals, and some say frontmen for the Rothschild banking system, but that's just a whisper and careless at that. Well, a key part of the U.S. strategy involves now the potentially supply of powerful long-range Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. Trump may use this as leverage, warning Putin that weapons will be sent to if Russia does not move toward a peace settlement. Now both sides appear to be feeling the pressure to negotiate. So much so, the U.S. and its allies are now experiencing financial and political fatigue from supporting Ukraine. While Russia faces its own battlefield challenges, recent U.S. success in mediating a ceasefire in Gaza, wink, wink, may also add momentum for peace. Well, despite the tension, there is a sense of cautiousness, yet optimism. Well, the Kremlin has stated it is open to talks and hopes U.S. influence can encourage Ukraine to be more ready for peace more than ever. This will be the second recent meeting between Trump and Putin, building on earlier a constructive discussion. And finally, the success or failure of these talks is quite critical. A successful agreement could lead to a long-lasting peace and end the suffering in Ukraine once and for all, despite Zelensky, Ukraine's greatest drag queen. However, if the talks collapse, it could deepen the conflict and lead to further escalation, which would only make the EU and NATO very happy. A very significant meeting indeed. Well, another significant happening there, you might have heard about the ceasefire in Gaza. Well, here's an update on that. As now, was the ceasefire broken, and by who? And without going further, I'm going to make a prediction that the ceasefire was broken. Israel did it, but they're going to say Hamas did it. It's my prediction. Well, here it is. Well, now Gaza's ceasefire collapses, as we knew, as we thought. While Israel and Hamas trade fire, risking wider conflict once again. The fragile U.S. brokered ceasefire between Israel and Hamas unraveled just yesterday, Sunday, October 19th, following a deadly exchange of fire in Rafah, with Israeli airstrikes killing at least 44 Palestinians and Hamas denying responsibility for the initial attack that left 2 Israeli soldiers dead. Well, the U.S. military deployed armored vehicles by the U.S. and personnel to southwestern Gaza. So we do have troops on the ground to protect aid deliveries. Now, this move has introduced a volatile new dynamic with analysts warning that Israeli forces may not hesitate to engage American troops if they perceive interference in their operations. Well, there's a thought. IDF soldiers firing upon U.S. soldiers just the way they wanted. Now, the immediate trigger for Sunday's violence remains contested. The IDF stated that Hamas fighters launched an anti-tank missile at Israeli forces over there in Rafah, while Hamas denied any role in the attack. Now, the discrepancy it underscores a deep mistrust between the two sides, and I can't imagine why. Netanyahu seems like his word is good as gold, and his handshake is as firm as, well, the devil himself. Now, the ceasefire collapse comes amid broader geopolitical tensions, they're saying, including Iran's accusation that Israel assassinated its president, Abraham Raisi, and the risk of multi-front war involving Hezbollah, the Houthis, and Iranian proxies themselves. And may I add, very pissed off Americans. Well, Israelis' blockade of food, water, and medical supplies has left hundreds of thousands of Gazans at risk of starvation. The U.S. State Department warned of Hamas potentially violating the ceasefire by attacking Palestinian civilians, but Hamas dismissed this claim as absurd. Well, there you have it. Looks like one country does not want a ceasefire. They want a continuation of the ethnic cleansing and genocide. Yes, they do. We are going to take a quick break here, and when we get back here, we're going to get to Real Deal Politics, and we're going to talk about how are the Senate and the Congress, how are they going to block this war? How are they going to block further troops on the ground in Gaza and, dare I say, Ukraine and potentially now China? We're going to find out as you're watching Late Night Update, or listening rather. We'll be back after this break for a whole lot more. You don't want to miss that. Stand by and stay tuned. And it is war, isn't it? So where are we off to now, Kathleen?
This is Rio del Sol. It's a side street just off of La Jolla Shores. When I used to come here, all these were homes and everything, and there was just one tiny little 7-Eleven type market down here. Everybody used it to get their snacks from the beach.
Here at La Jolla Beach, where we are here, as this On the Road series continues, it is phenomenal. I'm in my element. I smell amazing. I'm hungry. We're going to go have some eateries here. We're going to check out the market. The locals are nice to me. No one's bit me. No one's bitten me so far. So this is just true living. It's what it's the real deal, really.
Yeah.
No doubt about it.
It's real people.
No doubt about it. So stay tuned for more. Yeah. Wow, look at this one. What do we want?
So I'm just going to see what is all here.
Yeah.
This is wild.
live my stream, I'm a guillotine. Put it away in my machine. Where have you been? I love you. Shooting stars in my left arm, I'm an alcohol low. Giving away time to Casio. The sun is slow. I still love you. Is this where I'm going to? We'll see. We'll see. We'll see. I live my stream, I'm a guillotine. Put it away in my machine. Sing what I mean. Loved you. Is this where I'm going to? Is this where I'm going to? We'll see. We'll see. We'll see.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back, everybody, to Late Night Update. I am still Dean Ryan, who is live with you. Can you believe that? Yes, I'm live with you here on this very special news radio edition, which it will be the last week for that. And if you're not a member, well, you can still become one. And let me tell you what you missed before I tell you. Well, you missed an incredible interview over this last weekend, and become a Night Owl. You should go to RealDealMedia.tv, RealDealMedia.tv. But what we discovered during a very special episode of Late Night Thoughts, the Rabbit Holes and Dirty Malls episode, it was quite spectacular, wasn't it, members? Wouldn't you say? We learned about some major infiltrators, but a major move by Israel, we believe, into the alternative media. And members, don't give it away. Don't spoil it. It's one of the attributes. So big thank you to the Night Owls who make this thing run. And you saw there, San Diego, wasn't that beautiful? Some rare footage that never aired. San Diego's in major, it's under a major microscope right now as the war is heating up, and I'm going to tell you about that. But also, I want to tell you about this now. I'm going to make the bold announcement, and if I'm wrong, well, pin me to a Ferris wheel, will you? Well, starting Monday next week, we can now announce, because I feel it, World at War returns. Yes, it does. 10/27/25. Monday night. World at War, just the way you remember it, the way you like it. It's coming back with a whole new system, just in time to give us a real deal Halloween special next week. You don't want to miss that, and I can't wait for it. Quite thrilling, isn't it? So I tell you that. And a big thank you to everybody who has helped fund the Give, Send, Go for the Real Deal Go. You know who you are out there. We thank you very much. Okay, we're going to get back to business, as now we get to some real deal politics. And many people have asked, well, how are we going to stop this war? I'm just one person. Who am I? And, well, we say, well, sometimes the representatives come through. Sometimes great things happen during a shutdown. So as we now go to real deal politics, it now brings us to this. Well, now the Senate Democrats have now blocked military funding bill as shutdown crisis deepens. Yes, it's true. Led by the minority leader, Mr. Chuck Schumer, Democrats blocked a $852 billion defense appropriation bill, despite the bipartisan committee approval earlier. Well, the bill failed on a 50-44 vote falling short of the 60 vote threshold needed. Well, Mr. Schumer, the husband that is, insisted Democrats would not support military funding without a concession on social programs such as health care and housing, which Republicans argue is political leverage unrelated to defense needs, as they had blood dripping from their bloodthirsty mouth. Well, despite controlling Congress and the White House, well, Republicans need at least 9 Democratic votes to pass major funding bills. Well, Chuck Schumer at this time, his refusal leaves the government shutdown now on its 16th day and counting, yet unresolved. Well, President Donald Trump has now signed an emergency order to ensure military paychecks, long-term funding remains in limbo, while Republicans accuse now Democrats of holding military readiness hostage for political gain. What a thing to say. In closing, with negotiations stalled, House Republicans may push piecemeal funding bills, but Democrats refuse to budget and to finally provide a budge without concessions. That's right, they won't give in unless you buy them dinner first. Well, now critics question whether Democratic priorities have changed from national security or partisan strategy ahead of the 2026 midterms. I would say the second, if you were to ask me, and I'm an expert who is familiar with the matter. So that is quite thrilling. And well, now that moves us to budge over to, well, Pam Bondi is now Pam Bondi has now fired 2 prosecutors who opposed charges against New York Attorney General Letitia James. A source who we may not be familiar, but their source says. Well, the Trump administration has fired 2 federal prosecutors, as Pam Bondi is now given the waving signal to, over there in the Eastern District of Virginia, who voiced opposition to the criminal case against New York Attorney General Letitia James. A high-ranking Justice Department source familiar with the matter now has told over there CBS News, which apparently is a news station. Well, Kristen Byrd and Elizabeth Yusi were terminated Friday from their post as assistant U.S. attorneys in the Eastern District of Virginia, Norfolk office, where James' case is being prosecuted. Now, UC is, according to her LinkedIn page, had been an assistant U.S. attorney for the Eastern District since 2010. Now, Byrd, well, she had previously worked in the office since 2019 and was the deputy chief on the Narcotics and Violent Crime Unit. Her profile now says she's in the private sector, doing things in private. Well, these firings continue an ongoing purge in the office now after the oustering of Eric Sherbert, the former interim U.S. attorney who did not bring against James or former FBI director, Mr. Too Tall himself, James Comey. Excuse me. Well, the Injustice Department declined to comment at this time, although there have been other firings too, including the office's top national security official, Michael Ben-Ari. Well, he contends that he was fired because far-right social media figures like Laura I Eat Dog Food Loomer criticized him on X, but the Injustice Department has not commented on that fact. Also, First Assistant U.S. Attorney Maggie Cleary left her post and was told to clear her desk and get out just weeks after taking the position. She briefly led the Eastern District of Virginia last month, shortly after Mr. Sherbert's departure from office. Clearly had told the staff that she was Mr. Sherbert's replacement. But days later, former White House aide and Trump's personal lawyer, Lindsey Hooligan, was sworn in as an interim U.S. attorney less than a week after taking office. While Mr. Hooligan brought criminal charges against Comey, accusing him of lying to Congress and being foolish. Well, James is scheduled to be arraigned Friday, but it is yet unclear who will represent the Injustice Department at this time for the hearing because of the firings. But Hooligan secured James's indictment from a grand jury, but has never appeared in the Norfolk federal court. So there you have it. There you have it. The Injustice Department did not immediately respond to requests or even acknowledge the requests were even sent. Well, that's how this is. Latita James and James Comey, they're all screwed, and we might be too. We're not sure yet. Well, as that's happening now, there's another blunder, another boondoggle, and another anomaly. And that's what we like around here, in case you haven't figured that out. Well, now the question is also being asked, why is the Trump administration releasing alleged narco terrorist into the playground? Well, a mistake played out in a major role in unraveling, that is, as the Trump administration's legally dubious efforts to ignore what experts have said and called due process, and they sent undocumented migrants to a brutal El Salvador prison, specifically the wrongful deportation of Kilmar Abrigo Garcia. That's Kilmar Abrigo Garcia. Not to be confused with Kilmal Abrigo Garcia. Well, now they're saying, could it now be happening with another legally dubious, highly punitive Trump effort in Latin America, which we are pissing off Latin America like no one's business. Isn't that right, Marco? Well, last week, Americans learned that one of the most recent Trump administration strikes on the alleged drug-carrying submarine in the Caribbean failed to kill 2 of the people aboard. Now, the situation has now casted a spotlight on the holes in the administration's justifications for strikes, which, if you haven't seen the footage, it's quite daunting. And now the dilemma over what to do with the survivors has now crystallized the fact and injected the situation with new urgency. Even some Republicans have questioned the legalities of the strike, and the events last week could make it more difficult to move on, as Trump's GOP critics have now often criticized before are definitely on the critique boat as we now speak. Now, to recap, the administration has now scrambled to figure out what to do with the 2 survivors that survived a submarine attack just a week ago over there near Colombia and Ecuador. Some have wagered that it shows that these 2 men might have been innocent after all. Well, the administration, after all, is including, not limited to, providing public evidence for claims that its targets are, quote, narco terrorist. No doubt about it. Some people in the Colombian president's administration have called Trump's administration, well, the true narco terrorists, after all, and said the fishermen were killed and people who were killed by collateral damage from the strike. The U.S. will never be forgiven. Now, in addition to this, and also in closing, Donald Trump has now claimed that this past weekend, the United States military has now has claimed that at least 25,000 Americans would die, quote, if I allowed this submarine to come ashore because of fentanyl. If these men were engaged in any attempted mass killing of Americans, how in the world does the U.S. leave holding them accountable to other countries? It's dangerous enough to try to kill with military force, but not dangerous enough to detain and prosecute via lawful methods. A Harvard University law professor has now claimed, Mr. Jack Goldsmith. So there's a analyst for you. And this is a growing kinetic warfare that's really hitting the Latin American beehive, and it could have long-lasting ramifications, consequences, and effects for decades to come. Many experts should say, but this one here tonight is. Well, as I'm telling you that, another weird anomaly, blunder, mystery, quagmire, and yes, another boondoggle of confusion. Well, now it's now coming out that prison is running a massive Ghislaine Maxwell cover-up. Right, a prison consultant, Sam Mangle, reveals on a recent outing on the podcast that a unique blackout is hushing up every detail about Ghislaine Maxwell. Well, that's right. Officials at the Bureau of Prisons have now instituted a unique system for keeping absolutely every detail about Ghislaine Maxwell's secrets, a federal prison consultant revealed just today. Some experts even wonder if she's even a real person or not just an imaginary figure of a sketch artist in the stenographer world of the courts. Well, Maxwell is said to move to a cushier jail after an order came from, quote, well above their heads, following a visit from Trump's former personal lawyer, Mr. Todd Blanche, who is now the number 2 at the Department of Injustice. Well, the notorious partner in crime of the late sex offender, alleged, we should say, Jeffrey Epstein, was quietly transferred in August from a federal correctional institution in Tallahassee, Florida, to a federal prison camp in Bryan, Texas, that is known for its comforts relative to other jails. It's free HBO and ESPN, if we might add. Dare I say lazy boy to add. Well, Mr. Sam Mangle, a former inmate turned prison consultant for high-profile names like Steve Bannon, Peter Navarro, and maybe even Martha Stewart herself, explained that, well, they're now working overtime to keep every detail about Maxwell out of the news. That's right. Here's a quote from Mr. Mangle. Quote, when they go into prison, anybody of that type of stature or frame, inmates tend to be very curious. They want to almost live vicariously through them, and many of the staff tend to be very differential to them because they understand who they are and who their friends might be. In this case, with Miss Maxwell, it's completely different. They were warned, the inmates and the staff were warned prior to her coming in that under no circumstances, I repeat, no circumstances, are they to disclose anything that happens with her or to her or surrounding her during her time in prison. Which, ladies and gentlemen, if that's not the ingredients and the recipe for another assassination of self-inflicted suicide that's upcoming, I don't know what is. So there you have it. So Maxwell, who's now serving a 20-year sentence for sex trafficking, also took a rash step of waiving the public safety factor related to her sex crime conviction to overcome a, quote, severe restriction that would have prevented her transfer to a minimum security prison over there in Texas. So there's something that they're going to cover up. And we have to also ask, just from the world of logic, if the Epstein case and files were nothing but a Democratic hoax and fiction, why is this woman serving 20 years in prison? And we'll wait for the answer and we'll take it offline. It appears to be that Trump is now leaving the door open to a possible Maxwell pardon while pretending not to know her. You might have heard about that earlier this month. It's quite sickening, and it's giving me an ulcer, and I don't even drink. As for the question of a possible deal struck behind the scenes by Maxwell in the Trump administration, Mr. Mangle can only speculate the way a Mangle can. He said the following in closing, quote, I have to imagine that getting her to the Bryan prison over there in Texas was the starting point to getting her out of custody. Whether through communication or pardon, it just seems to me that you don't move someone to that type of facility with this kind of protection and precautions if you're not overly concerned about her safety and what she has to say and offer. My guess is speculation, but it's also a guess and probably reality that she will receive some sort of clemency, end quote. Well, there you have it, folks. She'll get a pardon where Roger Stone didn't even get a pardon. Stuart Rhodes never even got a pardon. How is this possible unless the American president was being blackmailed? Or we're playing 5D chess, and there you have it. Well, as I'm telling you that of the MAGA movement that's quite upset about this, well, this made the front page. And the headline goes, How Huntington Beach Became California's Angriest MAGA City. And that's exactly where I travel in and around. As now the former President Ronald Reagan, you might have famously remembered, called Orange County the idyllic and affluent Southern California community. a place where, quote, good Republicans go to die. Well, I didn't know he said that. And I've been feeling pretty mortal lately. When in recent years, as now Huntington Beach seems to be under a microscopic target once again. Well, the county hippies beachside surfer haven has drawn national attention for leaning dramatically further to the right than most of its California neighbors. The conservative majority city council, representing 200,000 residents, has now pushed right-leaning policies into action, sometimes directly in response to more progressive policies statewide. And may I add, they're now accepting a sister city of Huntington Beach in Israel. Now there's a affluent influx of Mr. Rabbis around everywhere. Quite interesting, and that's all I have to say. So just a few years ago, you might have also heard Huntington Beach had a Democratic-led city council, but in 2023, 3 virtually unknown conservatives, backed by already seated Republican members, successfully ousted the last remaining Democrats. Newly installed all-Republican group dubbed themselves the Magnificent Seven. And these people are ruling with an iron fist and trying to privatize a lot of things. It's not all a safe haven. So why this is interesting, it gets now into what I covered here, for Real Deal Media just weeks and weeks ago. According to the city council now, the Magnificent Seven, well, get this now. The city council of Huntington Beach hit the ground running, from trying to ban children's books by arguing they are, quote, porn, to pushing to prohibit flying the pride flag at government buildings, from opposing the miracle jab and mask mandates to dissolving the watchdog committee formed in the aftermath of white supremacist hate crime, saying in the 1990s. The Conservative Council has showed the seaside paradise into uncharted territories. That's right. Now, Huntington Beach Mayor Pat Burns, who was elected to the city council in 2022, summed it up differently. Quote, it's a middle-class town, basically. We just want to live our lives with as little government as control as possible. Well, that may be true, but there's other plans now. Now, the problem with this, just like you heard, they want to ban the books. They're using the planted psyop of the drag queen story time, which is incredible, to privatize the public libraries with companies that they're already invested in. Do we see the overlapping here? The conflict? Yeah, I think we do. There is a problem with a majority rule, isn't it? The conflict of interest. So it's good to see Huntington Beach in the headlines, but not like this. Anyways, moving on now. Interesting. Well, as you saw during the break there, you saw the San Diego, how beautiful it is. Well, as we kind of sunset here tonight, well, now Marines are investigating live fire blast over California, over the I-5 right now in San Diego. And I, for one, can tell you, you're hearing shells exploding. You're hearing military aircraft right now all over the place, is where I'm located, monitoring this impeding war that we've had generals now come out and say there will be major worldwide war and conflict coming very soon. Mark my words, unquote. You're hearing shells explode everywhere, and there's investigations into why that's happening. But it's no shadow of doubt that the United States has now entered into major conflict, sinking submarines, going after Venezuela as it's a stronghold for China and Russia, which they want to weaken. We are the military might of Israel. Israel wants to weaken those two superpowers before going into Iran for the greater Israeli project. Hence why the doubling down of Ukraine and the absurd Tomahawk missiles being sent there on our dime when we have starving people in the streets and people losing their medical insurance and health. This is now happening, and it's not our war, and Americans don't want it, and we are uniting together for the first time. So that's happening in San Diego right now. Major movement. You might hear it over me right now. In international news, as we heard about Latin America, well, now Bogota, the country of Bogota, is now slamming the U.S. invasion threat after Trump vows to end Colombian drug production. Yes, so far no word from Juan Valdez on the matter, but nonetheless, Colombia's interior minister has now spoken on the matter as he's now voiced anger at U.S. President Donald Trump for threatening a potential, quote, invasion of his country, the world's biggest cocaine producer, to combat drug production. See, I didn't know that. That's new to me. Well, now Trump angrily lashed out Sunday at his Colombian counterpart, Gustavo Petro, saying on social media that, quote, he better close up drug cultivation sites or the United States will close them up for him and it won't be done nicely. Well, that was a very bold statement, wasn't it? Espresso, anyone? Well, in a Blue Radio interview, Colombian Interior Minister Armando Benditti remarks by the U.S. president in his threat of invasion of military action against Colombia, saying, quote, I can't imagine closing down some hectares unless it's in that way, unless it's by invading by the U.S. Unheard of, unprecedented, not very nice. So there's another war front that's going to be happening now in Colombia. Now the sale of cocaine has just gone up by a whopping 70%, and it's already expensive, they say. And some other very flattering news, and a very lightful news. Well, Japan has now elected its first female leader. Yes, a hawk who promotes, get this, Japan first. That's right. Well, her name is Sanae Takachi. Sanae Takachi, a firebrand nationalist and security hawk, said to be chosen as Prime Minister of Japan starting tomorrow, becoming the nation's first female head of government during an unusually rocky time in Japanese politics. Takachi, who's 64 years old, would succeed Shigeru Asabi, who said last month that he would step down after bruising electoral losses that cost long-running Liberal Democratic parties its coalition majority in both parliamentary chambers. Now, the parliament is now scheduled to vote on a new prime minister just starting, well, tomorrow, or if you're in Japan, in a few hours. And local reports suggested that Takachi had overcome the last-minute attempts by opposing parties to derail her candidacy, will win after all, and as she hit the ground running. So this is quite exciting, isn't it? Ladies out there, if we have any listeners in Japan, we know we have one in the Philippines, but if you hear us in Japan, I guess it now shows each and every young Japanese girl out there that you yourself can be prime minister one day. If you put your mind to it, you can accomplish anything. And that's what I said when I first tried wasabi. And boy, was I wrong. I never accomplished it. Speaking of that now, something that's now getting accomplished is now a long-term California study, as we end the show tonight, a few studies that I find very interesting as the Real Deal Studies is underway. Like I was saying, a long-time California study now finds surprising links between birds and wildfires. So just when you thought it was Antifa starting the fires, the DEWs, no. There's a bunch of cranky cockatoos. Well, the research investigated 42 bird species in Yosemite, sequoias, and even Kings Canyon national parks. That's right, across several national parks in Sierra Nevada, researchers found that populations of some bird species grew rapidly after fires and remained higher even decades later. Well, scientists already knew that some bird species could thrive in a burn-scarred kind of environment, dubbing them, quote, post-fire specialists. With their little fireman hats on and their little fireman coats, they fly around, acting like they own the place. However, the new study published just recently on the 9th in the journal Fire Ecology, which, if you haven't read the new issue, well, you're missing out. Spent my weekend doing it. Well, provided a rare look at the long-term impacts on fires in the groups that they affect and the common bird species. Well, the researchers only investigated low to moderate intensity burns, such as those in previous fires, and suggest that high intensity megafires fueled by so-called climate change and suppression can threaten birds, but they're now coming back in droves, as now the birds are not just fornicating and creating, they're angry, hence angry birds. So they're now repopulating due to anger. Some people call that, hate procreating, I guess you could say. For example, the woodpeckers are cavity nesters, that they're saying, which is a dirty word in the bird world. So they make a hole in dead trees and raise their young there. And they're now so pissed off for making two holes. So you expect them to be positively affected after a fire sweeps through their land, their homes. They're only coming back in vengeance. What a study this was. What a very angry study. And finally, speaking of hatred, anger, and everything that accounts for that, well, here's another new study to close the night. Is the world's, I'm going to give you the top 10 of the world's most hated airlines. And I wish I was surveyed for this because I have a lot to say about it. If anyone knows my story from Frontier Airlines, well, I'm going to tell you now as the top 10 world's most hated airlines. Well, American Airlines, once again, ranked as the world's most disliked carrier. Yes, it did. With a dissatisfaction score of 56 out of 100, earning just 2.9 out of 10 from passengers. Budget carriers, Frontier and United, took second and third place, with Frontier, who I hate, posting the lowest passenger experience rating, 2 out of 10, despite serving 33.3 million travelers annually across 105 destinations, which some of them, and majority, you never make them to them, if I recall. British Airways led all airlines in lost of luggage complaints, 319 searchers per 100,000 researchers, while Air France matched American Airlines with 11 safety incidents and showed the second highest baggage complaint rate. The analysts examined 4 key metrics, including passenger experiences, ratings, evaluations, normalized complaint search volumes, and safety records, with higher scores indicating greater passenger dissatisfaction across major global carriers. And don't we know it? And let's never forgive these people who forced the mask on us. In my case, locked me in the damn bathroom until I put my mask on and to get back to my seat after I was literally vomiting. And we all know that story because I approached him after that, and well, it was the wrong guy. So there you have it. Yeah. So a lot of unknown airlines too from other countries, but yeah, we make the top 3 here in America, and that's the late night news to me. Okay, we're going to get out of here. I want to just say that beware of darkness is now here again, as we once were on the blackout watch. Just 5 years ago, we find ourselves repeating history as we are now here once again. So there you have it. All right, I will be back tomorrow night monitoring the world here from the late night headquarters here, the news radio editions, as the full show, World at War, will be back next week. You don't want to miss that. Okay, for all of us here at Real Deal Media in Late Night Update here, I'm Dean Ryan saying thank you for sharing a bit of your night. Until next time, always remember to stay tuned and stay awake. Good night, everybody.
If I live in my room, would you still remember me? But I must dream traveling on now. Too many places I've got to see. But if I stay here with you, girl, things it just couldn't be the same. 'Cause I'm as free as a bird, and as burning in our shame. love.